Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. This is the Daily Brief. We talk about Ukraine war news every day in the morning, and then later in the day, we cover three big stories, the three biggest stories that could impact the war in Ukraine. I'm going to talk about Donald Trump in just a little bit, and just a little bit about the fact set of what happened, but we're going to stay with the Ukraine war news, generally speaking here. 1320 Russians off the battlefield, 7 tanks, 32 armored combat vehicles, 46 artillery pieces, 77 vehicles and fuel tanks. Now, if you look at those numbers, 1,300 something, that's a little elevated even for recently, and there's 70,000 Russian casualties over the past 2 months. It's been ridiculously high since the Russians decided to try to attack at Kharkiv, and it's just been at a higher tempo ever since. What we know about the drone attacks by the Russians overnight, 2 Kh-59-69 cruise missiles were shot down, 3 Orlan 10 and 1 Zala reconnaissance drone were shot down. I don't know what got through, and I haven't been able to find articles that have shown, like, we got 2 of these, but how many else got through? I just think they're at a slower tempo right now. Since the beginning of this week alone, this is Anton Gershchenko, Russia has launched more than 700 guided aerial bombs, more than 170 attack drones of various types, and nearly 80 missiles against Ukraine. That's 1 week. As I've long said, Russia's impunity has shown everyone that the world has only one right, the right of force. And that's exactly what's happened. Forget the treaties, forget the agreements. Might will make right, and if we can force you to do it on the battlefield, we'll force you to capitulate. It's clear that sooner or later there will be a new agreement and new order, a new stability will come. The question is when, by what means, and as a result of what events will people realize that it's time to stop? The last time it happened was after the Second World War, and that's, Putin's appeal to arms and to arms, that's what's going to solve this. That's what they've chosen. Forget the Budapest Memorandum or Minsk or Minsk II. That's just what's going to happen here. Okay, Russia's advance toward a key eastern highway threatens Ukraine's grip on Donetsk Oblast. And we're talking about this area between Bakhmut and Avdiivka. Chasiv Yar is being threatened, and there's this highway here. And if they can capture this ground, it makes it much more difficult for the Ukrainians to sustain it. I don't think the Ukrainians are going to be able to hang on. And the reason is what they do is they decimate the land and the buildings, and there's nothing to be able to defend. There's no position to be able to defend from when they destroy the buildings that they're using for shelter. And so that's, I think, what's going to happen. Meantime, the Ukrainians are striking back. Russian oil infrastructure continues to satisfy hungry Ukrainian drones. Now, this was Rostov yesterday. Drone attacks a TV tower and substation in Russia's Kursk region. Here's another view of the Russian substation in the Kursk region, which led to power outages. Again, Ukrainian scouts blow up a Russian ammo depot, launched a drone launch site in one of the frontline sectors. Drone operators of Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Agency located and destroyed a Russian ammunition depot, several communications and surveillance systems, a launch point for FPV drones. The scouts from the GRU's Privid, that's Ghost unit, also launched a number of strikes on Russian infantry field fortifications and other positions. Okay, so they keep trying to hit back, and they're doing a pretty successful job at it. Okay, this video is a man in the bottom here is trying to defend. He's a sole guy defending this oil depot. Okay, I'm not going to show the drone strike, but I just wanted to see, like, this guy on the ground. Here's the drone coming in. And he's got this drone gun in his hand to try to repel it, and it's just not going to work. He's just not going to be successful. He's trying, but yeah, and we're going to stop there because in the next second you see a big boom, and I'm not showing that on YouTube for the censors. Okay, I'm also not going to show you anything graphic about what happened to Trump for the censors as well. So here are the facts that we know. Trump is speaking at a rally yesterday in Butler, Pennsylvania, and he's speaking. And as he's speaking, he doesn't know there's someone about to try to assassinate him. He looks, he turns his head to his right, and as he does, the shots ring out. It clips his ear. Had he been turned the other way, like face on or with a side view of that, he probably would not be alive right now. And so he narrowly escaped death. Now, anyone looking at this should be thinking, even if you don't like Trump, this was an assault on democracy. I know there's lots of rhetoric about how Trump's going to destroy democracy. But that's rhetoric. This is reality. That's an assault on democracy. And everyone should be standing against assassination attempts of your political leaders or even your political opponents. Now, this is where we are with what we know about what's happened, who the guy was that did this. The FBI has identified the man who shot Donald Trump as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. The shooter is a registered Republican, and he was killed wearing a Demolition Ranch t-shirt, a popular gun website. Okay, so it's really easy to try to start at this point, he must be like this or he must be like that. Wait, just let the facts come out. Don't jump to conclusions. I don't think this is helpful. This tweet I saw, so it wasn't a Democrat. It wasn't an illegal immigrant. It wasn't an LGBT person. It wasn't an African American. It wasn't anyone he said was poisoning the blood of Americans. He was white, young, and a registered Republican. Not helpful. Don't do that. Don't add to the vile bile that's in the bloodstream of the American culture. Don't. Okay, here's what we know about Thomas Matthew Crooks. This is from Reuters, and so this will help us because we'll understand a little bit more about him. The FBI identified 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, as a suspect in Saturday's attempted assassination of former U.S. President Donald Trump. The suspect was shot and killed by the Secret Service. FBI said it was working to determine a motive for the attack. Fair. Let's see what comes out of this as they research it and try to find out. State voter records show that Crooks was a registered Republican. That may be useful, that may not be useful. When Crooks was 17, he made a $15 donation to Act Blue, a political action committee that raises money for left-leaning and Democratic politicians, according to a 2021 Federal Election Commission filing. The donation was earmarked for the Progressive Turnout Project. Again, we don't know that that's where his sympathies really lie, or if he has changed since then, but that's part of the fact set. We just don't know anymore. Crooks' father, Matthew Crooks, 53, told CNN he was trying to figure out what happened and would wait until he spoke to law enforcement before speaking about his son. Okay, can you imagine how bizarrely bad of a position this dad is in? Like, what? I point out that line to say this: have empathy, one, for the person, for Trump, even if you don't like him, almost assassinated. For the people killed, there was both the shooter and there was somebody at the rally that was, I believe, killed. There were people injured there. Like, instead of jumping right to political stuff, let's just think about the humanity of the situation before we get there. This is also from the Kiev Post. Additional video talking about the same subject. Additional video has surfaced on social media in which Crooks says, quote, "My name is Thomas Matthew Crooks. I hate Republicans. I hate Trump. And guess what? You got the wrong guy." So he videoed himself saying this, I guess so that afterwards they would, he could have some kind of impact on messing with people. I don't know what exactly he was trying to do. The Kiev Post has rightly, I believe this is the right call, made the editorial decision not to embed the video. Now, they quoted it, but they are not embedding the video in our news piece, following journalistic and ethical standards, not to glorify the assailant, which could be inspirational to copycat criminals. And I think that's the right tone. Okay, with that, I'm going to shift gears. We'll talk more about this later on as facts emerge, but let's shift gears back to more news about Ukraine. The West finally allowed Ukraine to strike back at Russia, and it seemed to be working, according to the CNN article, and I think that's correct. The newly granted permission by the United States and other allies to use Western weapons to strike inside Russia had a huge impact. We have destroyed targets inside Russia, which have allowed for several successful counteroffensives. The Russian military can no longer feel impunity and security, the senior Ukrainian official told CNN. We're deploying the most effective weapon systems in the area where the Russians are trying to break through the defensive lines, and there has been significant slowdown in the Russian advance. While Kyiv hasn't managed to reclaim large swaths of territory, it has successfully averted what could have been a disaster, the occupation of Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. So that's important. But they've been allowed to hit back a little bit. Let them hit back fully with their capable range, and there's apparently only 14% of the range of ATACMS was authorized with Western weapons, and that's just simply not enough. Meanwhile, Lukashenko orders withdrawal of troops from the border of Ukraine. This was almost comical. Alexander Lukashenko on Saturday ordered the withdrawal of Belarusian troops from the border with Ukraine, announcing stabilization of the situation on the southern border, as if the Ukrainians were about to invade Belarus to begin with. I'm not understanding what's been stabilized. But he goes on and says, if it is necessary to withdraw troops somewhere, withdraw them. There should be no unnecessary measures. But everything at the border was an unnecessary measure. Ukraine wasn't about to invade Belarus. How Ukrainian geeks are making gullible Russians pay for the war with a dating scam. And so there's dating apps where there's a big pool of Ukrainians, many of them are guys, using female photos to have a dating scam app, or a dating app scam where they're luring Russians to pay for a date, that doesn't actually happen. Now, there's nothing new about this. This goes back all the way to it's probably predates the Civil War, but I know in the American Civil War, there were women who would actually get themselves engaged to multiple men on the other side, and then ask them to tell me you're safe, and tell me where you are, I'm worried about you, and then they'd pass the intelligence along. So there's nothing new here. What might a Russo-Ukrainian war peace deal look like? Now, I didn't like the title, but I read it anyway, and I want to show you just a few quotes within this article. First one is this: the West doesn't want to win this war. It simply doesn't want Ukraine to fall. I thought about that, and I thought, based on the actions that the Biden administration has put forward, this seems about right. This seems about what the West has been doing with Ukraine throughout this war, and it's very sad to watch. Second quote here: the current approach has led Russians to collectively enjoy a lack of accountability. Yes, let the Ukrainians use those Western weapons to strike and see if it changes things. Russia isn't genuinely interested in negotiations, and it's only creating the appearance of willingness to talk. It continues to pursue its maximum plan, and that's exactly right as well. They still have maximalist objectives that they have never gotten past. So the IFU enters into an agreement to purchase artillery shells worth 300 million pounds, and that sounds great until you realize what that means. The UK-administered International Fund for Ukraine will place a new order, and that's good, I'm glad they're doing it, worth Great Britain pounds 300 million for 120,000 rounds of 152 millimeter Soviet-era ammunition. Okay, what does that mean? So that's 120,000 rounds. The Ukrainians could burn through 200,000 in a month. So, and this is just being announced. This isn't even being delivered. So that's where we are with this particular article. I think this was very useful. This was the Romanian president saying, I think it's time to be realistic. We, NATO, delivered about half of what we promised. Such supplies are not enough. And if Western countries want Ukraine to win, then more must be transferred. He's right. Johannes is right. I agree fully with that statement. And the stakes couldn't be higher. No major international organization has facilitated the return of Ukrainian children abducted by Russia. Ukrainians are doing it themselves. Russia's abducted over 19,000 Ukrainian kids to brainwash and raise them as Russians. The number's certainly higher than that. 19,000 Ukrainian kids that we know of. Okay, more air-to-air combat. I always like looking at this. For some reason, this is a Ukrainian drone that you see below. It's the point of view is the Russian drone. And I find this fascinating. I don't know why, and here we go. They're about to clash. And I'm not sure how they clash, where they do this, or where you can knock this guy off, but that's what happened. Okay. Now, I'd like you also to see this, how this is from United 24 Media. This is how Russian aggression changed Kyiv. And you see Kyiv before and you see Kyiv after. I can't show this for YouTube censors, but I want you to see this, and I'll post it, I'll pin it in the link below. Finally, I'll leave you with this because, art has a way of telling the truth when the truth just can't be spoken in words. Here's a Russian plane. Here we have a pregnant woman. We have babies. We have children. We have elderly people. Yeah, that should be another plane or a military target, but doesn't seem to matter to the Russians. All right, my friends, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to me today. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.